Mhm.
I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm ready. Uh-oh. I do this all the time. That's not my music, but I'm
That's not the
ready.
music.
It's not the music, but I'm ready. Hello, everyone, and good evening. The interview that we have all been waiting for a very long time. Mr. Law and Order himself, Prosecutor David Leyton. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Good evening. Thank you for inviting me on. I'm impressed by your setup
Oh,
and looking forward to our conversation.
oh yes. This is definitely going to be a great conversation. I am trying to share it to my page as soon as I can find it. Oh, I know what I did. I did something wrong here. Well, maybe I didn't, Mickey. How come I can't find it?
You go to 810.
Huh?
It's on there. Go to 810.
Oh, that's right. You're right. You're right. Mickey has to help me. So, shout out to A10 News Media Group and the greatest producer in the world, Mickey Jordan. Thank you, Mickey, for the nice setup. He said he liked your setup, Mickey. You're gonna thank the prosecutor.
Most gracefully, I said.
Not only the prosecutor, but an old radio man.
Oh,
I was a newscaster back in the late 70s and early 80s on News Talk 910 WFDF when it was located in Flint.
What?
I was one of the newscasters and local reporters.
Well,
That's
David,
how I started my career. That's what brought me to Flint.
Really?
Yep.
And see, I thought I knew almost everything about you, but I didn't know that.
How about that?
So tell me. So well, let's go from there. Let's give the people some history. So you were 910 radio host.
I was a journalism major. I wanted to
Okay.
be a reporter. It was the era of Watergate and Woodward and Bernstein,
Okay.
where so many people wanted to be journalists.
Right.
Well, I was one of those people, and I got a job in Flint.
Okay.
And I eventually landed at WFDF, which was the big news station back in the day.
Okay.
We don't really have that anymore, but back in the day, WFDF covered all the local events. We covered Flint City Council. We covered the Genesee County Board of Commissioners. We
Okay.
covered the Flint Board of Education. We went to all the local meetings and all the events, and we competed with the Flint Journal, which back then also printed on a daily basis. And I was one of the local reporters. I got to know a lot of people in town from the days of Mayor Jim Rutherford. I was there the night Mayor Jim Sharp beat Rutherford to become the mayor of Flint. I was the one who first reported it on the airwaves of WFDF, which is 910, which has now moved its license to Detroit.
Right, 910 Superstation AM.
Exactly,
like
where Mayor Dr. Weaver has her show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know that. And then from there, what did you do?
Well, I went to law school because I wanted to enhance my resume so that I could get a job with the network.
Okay.
Because what I was doing was I was freelancing for the network, CBS, covering big national stories that occurred in Michigan.
Mhm.
For example, back then there was a lot of protests about nuclear energy,
Okay.
and there was a nuclear energy plant in Midland. And I remember going up there one day, took my girlfriend with me, who's now my wife of 43 years.
Come on now, David.
Yes, same woman.
Okay.
And I covered this Midland nuclear plant protest, and I fed the story to CBS News in New York, and it was broadcast all across the country. And my parents, who had moved by then to Florida, heard it in Florida, and they were very proud of their son. So my goal was to become a national reporter, a network reporter, cover wars, go all around the world.
Right.
But I didn't want to be away from Therese. If you're a big time national reporter, you're on the road half the year. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be with her.
That's so sweet.
So I hung a shingle and practiced law.
Okay.
And here I am.
Right, but you were also Flint Township.
That was later. We're talking now about 1978, 79, 80. I didn't get elected to office until 1992.
So you took that law degree to the Flint Township Clerk's office.
That's correct. In 92, I was elected trustee.
Okay.
I ran on a ticket with Sally Shaheen Joseph.
Okay.
and a bunch of other folks, and we won a bunch of seats.
Okay.
And I was a trustee and still practicing law. And then the incumbent clerk passed away, unfortunately, a woman named Loretta Manwaring.
Okay.
She passed away, and the rest of the township board was charged with having to replace her. They chose me. So I then became the township clerk, and I served in that role until I was elected county prosecutor.
Well, that's awesome. And I think I remember, what year were you elected prosecutor?
2004.
Ran against Barry Wolf.
Correct, in the
Yep.
Democratic primary.
Yep, I remember that.
Very
That
spirited campaign.
Yeah, it was very, very, very. I must say I was very involved with the union during that time at Hurley, and I remember that quite well. It was a knockdown drag out. That was one of the first knockdown drag out races that I've seen here in Flint. But you were victorious out of it, and you've been rolling ever since. And we became friends, not only on the job but off the job. I supported Leyton, against popular opinion the last race.
Thank
I
you.
stuck with it. You're not only are you my friend, but I have confidence in you doing the job. Okay. Yes, remember the pictures that were floating around when you came to my church, but you just didn't come during the campaign, and that's what a lot of people don't understand. You've been there plenty of times. You know Pastor Hill. You know his sermons. What's your favorite sermon?
It's an inside job.
It's an inside job.
I will never forget that sermon.
Right.
That is maybe the most wonderful sermon I've ever heard in all the years I've been attending church services and mosques and synagogues.
And he always says that.
Pastor Hill was just unbelievable.
He's a great guy.
He sure is.
So what we did, and thank everyone for joining in. What we did today, I said I was going to do this for my Flint Politics Reboot group. And I made a post and I said, because they are so loyal. We talk about politics every day. And it's not really a lot that I want to ask you, and it's a lot that they want to ask you. I do want to set the foundation, though. I'm going to read the questions just like they are, as many as I can, get to before our hour is up. But how many assistant prosecutors do you have working for you?
I think we have in the neighborhood of 40, give or take, because
40?
I think so. One left just this week to take a job with the City of Flint Attorney's Office.
Oh.
So William Balser is his name.
Okay, yep.
He had been with the city, came to us, and left this week for a substantial increase in pay.
With the City of Flint?
Yes, believe it or not. And that's an issue that we can talk about, in that my office is not competitive when it comes to being able to pay lawyers for their services to our office. We just don't pay enough, and it's an issue I'm working with the county board on. But yeah, we lost him this week. So from any given time, we have around 40. It ebbs and flows. Sometimes people leave, and a lot of people have left in the last year. It goes down to 35. Sometimes but it never gets up above 40.
Right. And then another thing I want to ask, and I'm not sure of this. Every case, and according to Councilman Mays, it's a stack. It's a stack of cases that are cold cases that are waiting to be sorted through. Do you sign off of every single case that hits that circuit court or district court or whatever court?
I do not, and no human being could possibly do that. The volume is so great that you have to give certain levels of authority to your assistants.
Okay.
In Genesee County, we must have 8,000 cases at any given time in the circuit court system.
8,000?
The prosecuting attorney is the plaintiff on.
Right.
Yes, because every year anywhere from 3,600 to 4,000 new cases come in. Now, they don't all get charged, but they all have to be reviewed. And a lot of people forget about this because, they see just the cases that are in front of the judges.
Right.
But there's many cases, thousands of cases that never get to the judge because we look at them, make the determination that there's not enough evidence, and then we say you have to either investigate more or that you're not going to get a warrant. So the answer is no, I don't look at every case. I only look at certain cases. We have policies within the office, and the staff knows which cases have to go through me and which ones don't.
Okay. All right. So we've laid that foundation. So I know, and you know, you get blamed for every case, regardless.
Well, my name's on the door, and that's appropriate.
Right.
And I accept that. And you have the job, you have to have very broad shoulders and very thick skin. And that's okay. The public deserves the right to criticize, to praise, to know what's going on. I try to be as open and transparent as possible. I have an open door. I meet with all attorneys who want to meet with me about their cases. And I meet with families when I can. I met today with a woman who lost her daughter in a terrible car crash involving a drunk driver. I met yesterday with a woman whose husband was run down in a neighborhood by a driver who claims he didn't see him. We try to be open and transparent. Obviously, like anybody, I only have so much time in a day to do things. And so we try to be as efficient as we can as well.
All right. Well, thank you for coming and taking time out of your busy schedule and bringing my friend Mr. Potbelly.
Close.
Potberry. I know, I'm just messing with you, getting your attention. No, it was just a joke. You look fine.
Well, it's just so your audience knows, John Potberry was one of my very first appointments that I made after I was elected. He's the deputy chief prosecuting attorney. He does all sorts of things to help me. He's been at my side since the beginning, and he is a very talented lawyer.
Okay. All right. Well, see that? You might get a raise tomorrow. All right. So, can someone? Okay. So yeah, Tony, we're gonna get to your question first, Tony. So let me read the foundation for Tony's question. I'm gonna go in order. I left my reading glasses at home, but I'm gonna do the best that I can. The MDOC listed Roy as an absconder on July 11th of this year. Also, while on parole, Tony Roy in March was charged in Genesee County District Court. Aggravated domestic violence, torture, 2 assaultive counts, and 8 gun-related offenses. The case was dismissed the following month. It goes on to say the lady, Shauna Roy, mother of 2 sons, ages 16 and 7, are now with their maternal grandmother. He ended up torturing his wife, if you shall say that. He cut her up and he put her into bags, according to the paper, in the bathtub in Kings Lane Apartments. The first question: why are you signing off on plea arrangements with murderers?
Okay, so I think the question is unrelated to what Mr. Roy is talking about. Are we asking about Mr. Roy?
He's asking. He's pertaining to this right
here. Let's talk in general first, and just so you and your audience understand. I don't know about every case, and it's impossible for me to answer specific questions about specific cases because I'm just not familiar with some of them. We have so many, as I've mentioned.
Right.
The particular case you're talking about, I know something about. It's obviously an extraordinarily heinous crime, and I do believe that the alleged perpetrator of the crime ultimately was shot by the police down in Metro Detroit.
Yes.
But I remember being asked about this within the last month or so, and I did look into it. So that's how I know the answer to the question. And the reason that the charges here against him related to the domestic violence were dismissed was because the victim of that crime, who was not his wife, a different person, not the person who ended up being dismembered, a different victim, failed to appear in court despite our great efforts to find her. We have a staff of investigators, thanks to ARPA money, And I remember
not Flint's ARPA money.
not Flint's
Okay,
ARPA money,
let's clear
county
that up.
county ARPA money.
Okay.
And I understand there's issues with the Flint City ARPA money, but
Please
no,
don't
this
say.
is county ARPA money.
Okay.
Our investigator actually went out and she refused to come to the door. We tracked her down. We knew where she was. She wouldn't come to the door. We couldn't even serve her with a material witness warrant. So it's a long answer to the question is the victim, not the woman who ultimately was dismembered, a different victim, refused to come to court to testify. And without her testimony, we couldn't go forward.
So the charges were dropped because you had no witness.
And that happens way too often in domestic violence cases.
Well, you got the city. Aren't you working with the city on this great witness protection I'm not going to say it's a great witness protection program because the last witness was murdered. I mean, what are your thoughts? Even if you want to touch that at all, what are your thoughts?
Well, I've been wanting a witness protection program statewide for years. Prosecutor Kim Worthy from Wayne County and I are close friends and colleagues on the Prosecuting Attorneys Association of Michigan Board of Directors. And the two of us have been talking about the need for a witness protection program statewide for years. But finally, in the past 6 months, we were able to get some Mott Foundation money that pays for some local folks to get some witness protection prior to them testifying and prior to our ability to bring the perpetrators of the crime in. So it's a program that I think will be helpful. The truth of the matter is the money, while it was offered, we couldn't get every duck in a row until after that poor person was murdered.
Wow.
The sign off on the memorandum of understanding didn't get finalized until after that witness was killed. So that's,
that's unfortunate.
It's very sad.
Right.
But we do have something in place now. And with my assistant prosecutor who heads the gang prosecutions and Chief Green, we are working on who should be placed in that program according to the particular facts of a case.
Who will lead that program? Will it be the county or the city?
It's the county on the lead. We will consult with the city because the city was the one that had the contacts with the Mott Foundation to get the funding.
Okay.
But ultimately, I get to sign off on whoever goes into witness protection.
All right. Let's keep going. So, Derek Dorman, Ken Thomas of Thomas Appliance took $6,400 of his money and never delivered any appliances. Any chances he can get his money back? And he also he listed a case here, former Grand Blanc Township business owner. Thomas Appliance is right there at the point in Grand Blanc.
Yes, it was.
And could be ordered to pay back over $100,000 in fraud case. So how does that work?
We charged him as harshly as the law allowed us to do.
Okay.
We have not offered any kind of a negotiated plea. We certainly believe that upon conviction, restitution, which is what payback is called in the criminal system, restitution should be ordered by the judge.
Okay.
And that's something we will absolutely fight for. But it's one thing for a judge to order restitution. It's another thing for the person to pay it.
Right.
Now, you have an individual here who allegedly took money saying, I'm going to provide you with the appliance, took the money under false pretenses, knowing, allegedly, that he wouldn't be able to deliver those appliances. And that's how we've charged it. My experience tells me that when a person does that, they're usually hurting for money.
Right.
They're doing it because they've either...
Yeah,
they need the money. They've either lived too high off the hog, or they're into gambling, or they have some other issue going on.
Right.
So that means he probably doesn't have the money to fulfill the order of restitution, which means you're probably not getting your money back. But what happens here is he probably has all these debts and creditors out there, and he's going to have to go into a bankruptcy court, I assume. And bankruptcy does not extinguish restitution. Okay. So the restitution will still be out there. I suspect whatever assets he may have that they can put together, he'll have to pay back some of his creditors. You're probably not going to get 100 cents on the dollar.
Right.
Maybe you'll get 5 cents on the dollar. I don't know.
So Derek,
but we're
you're
going to
not getting
hold
any
out
money.
for restitution.
Okay. We're going to wish Derek, but we don't know. All right. So let's.
Unfortunately, Wyntis, I think you're right.
Well, I usually am, but thank you, Prosecutor Leyton. Okay. Melissa, how about the Mitchell boys? Tough case. I know it's ongoing litigation right now. I don't know how much you're able to speak on that.
You know, on cases that are pending, I can't say a lot, but what I can say is this. I've met with the mother of the two young boys, and it's a very sad case. And my heart bleeds for people like that.
Right.
When the investigation, was done by the Flint Fire Department after the incident, statements were given by the two firefighters who allegedly went into the house, allegedly crawled around the floors, and allegedly failed to find the two young gentlemen.
Right.
Those statements were made under a type of protection known in the common law as Garrity versus New Jersey, or a Garrity statement.
Okay.
So
explain that. Yeah.
Back in 1967,
okay,
the United States Supreme Court was faced with a case out of New Jersey where some police officers had been accused of being involved in a bookmaking ring, and they were ultimately fired. And certain statements that they had used were used against them in the criminal prosecution.
Okay.
The Supreme Court of the United States ruled that it's unconstitutional and a violation of the 14th Amendment, the Due Process Clause, to force somebody to give a statement that not only could jeopardize their employment, but could also land them in a criminal situation.
Gotcha.
So the court said that if you give a statement under this rule to protect your job, it can't be used against you in a criminal proceeding. And all the statements that these firefighters gave are Garrity protected, which means I can't use them in a prosecution. I've not closed the file on that case. We are continuing to monitor the civil litigation that's going on. And if we are able to glean additional information through the civil litigation, we might then be able to take a second look at whether we could bring criminal charges.
All right. Thank you. And I think we are all learning different things. So these are great questions, and I'm glad that we're getting them answered. I had no idea that statements given on the job, by firefighters in this case, are protected.
Police and fire. Public
and fire.
Employees.
Public employees.
Yeah, I actually brought a little blurb from the case because I anticipated the questions.
Okay.
The Garrity holding said that where police officers being investigated were given a choice either to incriminate themselves or to forfeit their jobs under New Jersey law on ground of self-incrimination, and officers chose to make confessions, those confessions were not voluntary but coerced, thereby violating their 14th Amendment and Fifth Amendment rights.
Okay.
So that's the dilemma for me in this particular investigation.
So it's it's like the picture is painted. I know you care, and I know that nobody. I really can't speak for the firefighters. I know myself, if I was a firefighter, I just feel for the mother, period. I can't get into that. And I know you have a heart, and I know it's probably things that you wanted to say and you wanted to do, but you got to follow the law.
It's when you have my job, even though you have a heart, sometimes you have to set it aside to make a determination based only on the law and without the passion or the emotion that might be attached to the case.
How hard is that for you?
It can be very, very difficult, especially when children have been harmed. That's the toughest case. When you look at a case where a child is dead, or you look at a case where a child has been sexually assaulted and abused.
Yeah, I hate those.
It's awful. It's very, very difficult, but you still have to set that aside and apply the facts to the law and make an impassioned decision.
Okay. All right. Well, let me keep going. Another one from Mr. Wiggins. Is anyone going to come out and publicly say what caused the Hogarth explosion? And was any of the families compensated through financial settlement?
Well, I'm aware of the Hogarth explosion because I watch the news like a lot of other people do, and I read them live, and I listen to you. But
Thank you.
believe it or not, I have not been involved in that at all. There was no investigation that ever came to the Genesee County Prosecutor's office, so I assume that meant that the investigating police authorities did not feel that there was any criminal activity at all, because it never came to us for a determination whether there was probable cause that a crime was committed. So the only thing that I would say is probably going on there is potential civil litigation where folks are wanting money damages for the losses that they suffered. Beyond that, I don't know anything about the case other than what I've seen in the media.
Wow. Philip Lee, I'm just going to skip back over to Facebook real quick. Question on behalf of the public. From a legal representation perspective, what is at least one basic defining difference between civil and criminal laws? This is something we used to learn in school, but civics is not as strong in education as it once was.
Well, the major difference is in the criminal law, you can lose your liberty if you are convicted of the crime. You can be incarcerated. Mm-hmm. In the civil law, you can't be incarcerated if you lose. You might have to pay money. You might have to do something to make somebody whole, but you cannot lose your freedom in a civil litigation. In a criminal litigation, you can lose your freedom.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Well, let's keep going down. Miss Matthews, her nephew's been missing for 2 years and hasn't been put on a poster yet for Crime Stoppers. How does that work? Are you in with the Amber Alerts and Crime Stoppers? Who gets priority on missing children?
So we're fortunate in our area of the state to have a wonderful Crime Stoppers outfit and a director whose name is Julie Lopez.
Okay.
And they are governed by a board of directors. I'm not on it, but I'm a huge supporter of Crime Stoppers. They've been extremely helpful to me in finding people who can help us put evidence together. So the person to contact is Julie Lopez, and I didn't bring my phone with me, but I have her number in my phone. John, do you have Julie Lopez's number?
Okay. Well, you can get it to me, and
we'll get it to you, and you can tell her.
Yeah.
Julie Lopez is the person to contact.
Okay.
And explain to her about the situation, and she makes the determination of what type of publicity should be attached to it.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Next one from Tamara Mason. With less than a year before the statute of limitations run out, are there ever going to be manslaughter charges filed against the people responsible for poisoning the residents of Flint? Second part, why haven't the state attorneys representing the residents during the water crisis kept in touch as far as what is the next steps?
So, little history here.
Let's go.
After the Flint water crisis started, back when Governor Snyder was in office, the Attorney General of Michigan was Bill Schuette. Bill Schuette appointed me to a group of lawyers, a small group, including Todd Flood, who I think is well known to the folks of this community. Yeah. He's a private lawyer out of Detroit, but he was appointed the special prosecutor. Well, I was kind of like on his team.
I didn't know
and
that.
I was in the room when Attorney General Schuette and Mr. Flood and several other assistant attorneys general looked at the cases. And as you all know, I mean, it's public knowledge, the case was charged. And the case against Nick Lyons was actually bound over from the district court to the circuit court for trial in front of then Judge Joe Farah. Then Attorney General Schuette's term ended, and Attorney General Nessel came on board. And as she absolutely had the right to do, she changed the team. And Prosecutor Worthy became part of that team. And there were some other folks who made a decision that they were going to do things a little differently. And so that case against Lyons was dismissed. And then they presented the case to a one-man grand jury. Mm-hmm. The Michigan Supreme Court ultimately decided that a one-man grand jury was unconstitutional. Right. They threw out all the charges and said you have to start over. There was some appeals of that decision, and ultimately it didn't go anywhere.
Right.
It's a long answer to this. I don't know the status now because I'm not in the room anymore. I'm not part of the team, and I don't know if there's going to be any charges. Many of the charges, including the charge against Governor Snyder, which Attorney General Nessel's team brought, got thrown out. My team, when I was part of the team with Schuette, we never charged Governor Snyder. I didn't feel like there was enough evidence at the time. And the irony of all this is that I ran against Bill Schuette in 2010. I ran for state attorney general, and he beat me. And yet we somehow forged an alliance on that particular issue. I get along great with Attorney General Nessel. I supported her reelection. I think she's done a terrific job. But I'm not in the room to answer specifics about what their next step may be in the Flint water case.
So I'm catching one thing that you said. You said you didn't feel like it was enough as evidence to charge Governor Rick Snyder. So he poisoned the whole city. What else did you need? I mean, that's just coming from me to you. Like, what the hell are we looking at? Like,
if you're going to charge a sitting governor, you better have a smoking gun. And when I looked at the evidence, and this is many years ago, I didn't think there was a smoking gun. Now, maybe Attorney General Nessel uncovered something, her team. She actually wasn't involved herself. She was involved in the civil litigation. Maybe her team uncovered something that we weren't aware of. I know he had appointed the emergency manager.
Right.
I know that he had encouraged them to use the river water to save money. But if you're going to charge a sitting governor, you better have a smoking gun.
Something like with the president. And
you need, a tape recording saying, you know what? I don't care about those people. Let's turn on the spigots.
Okay.
But I don't think that we didn't have that back then. Maybe they had it later on.
Okay.
I was out of the room by then.
All right. Well, let's keep going. All right. Michelle Young, she made a comment referencing to what you just said. Well, what Tamara asked. This right here. She said, someone is guilty. We didn't ask to be poisoned. Shame on the legal arena for not holding anyone accountable. This will not happen in Birmingham or Farmington Hills.
I don't disagree with that. I agree with what she's saying. Somebody should have been held accountable. There were some really poor decisions made. But were they criminal? And if so, what were the crimes? And if so, what evidence is there to back the elements that you have to prove in a courtroom? Remember, in a courtroom, we're charged with proving beyond a reasonable doubt every element of that crime. And it's not that easy of a thing to do.
I know.
It's become very, very difficult. Juries expect tape recordings and forensic science,
pictures, the whole nine,
DNA.
Yep.
The juries want everything. So it's not that easy to do. Somebody should have been held accountable. We were on a track to hold somebody accountable. We had a statement by the person I mentioned before that something to the effect of, well, you have to die from something. And I thought that was like a smoking gun type of statement. And that's why I thought that the charges were appropriate at the time. And
that's why you're not in the room anymore.
Well, that I don't know.
Right, I know. You know me. I'm going to throw some shade on it. Let's keep going. I want to get to as many of these questions as I can. Another one. This is a good one. This is another popular case in Flint from Mr. Wiggins again. Mr. Leyton, have you ever been approached by Mayor Neely to inquire about any particular case you were involved in prosecuting, for example, Johnny Cole or anyone else?
Tell me who Johnny Cole is.
Oh, God. So Johnny Cole, a.k.a. Johnny Peters, was the guy who gave 49.
Yes,
okay.
yes. Okay,
Yeah.
that's all you needed to say.
Right.
No, Mayor Neely has never approached me about that case. Sheriff Swanson and I have talked about that case a number of times because he was the investigating agency.
Have you read the text messages?
I probably have, but like I say, it's been a while. But
Okay.
I know we got some inquiries from some LGBTQ publications out of Lansing about that case.
Okay.
So, but no, Neely never approached me about that case.
All right. Okay. Well, let's keep going. This is from Bethany Hazard. I'm not sure if it's a statement or a question. Leyton was in on the illegal bond deal to fix the lagoon, and the money was used for the KWA.
I don't have any idea what that means or what it's about.
Okay.
I was the
Karagandhi Water.
Yeah, I know
Authority.
I know what the Karagandhi water is. No, I've not been involved in that at all. I don't even think my civil side, the corporation counsel side, we certainly didn't do the bonding because the county uses other bond counsel for that. So we didn't do that. So I think my only involvement with the KWA is that's where I get my water from at my home in Flint Township, and I pay my water bills quarterly.
Okay.
That's probably my only involvement.
All right. I got a question I want to throw in here. Let's pause for the cause before I want to ask one question because it just happened. Eric Mays. Do you know that guy?
Very well.
Okay. You probably seen.
I think everybody knows Eric.
I think everybody knows Eric. So he got thrown out 30 days censure for cursing and swearing in an open meeting. He says, you can't throw me out because of some case. So if you were his attorney, what do you think about that? And he's not sweating because he's nervous. It's hot as hell in here.
Yeah, it is warm in here,
Right.
but it's okay. I think Eric is a bright guy. I really do, and I've always felt that way. Mm-hmm. I also think he would benefit from greater discipline.
Okay.
I think that if he would rein in some of his emotion and passion and just use his God-given smarts, which he has lots of,
right,
he would be a more effective councilman for not only his ward and his constituents, but for the city at large. And he's capable of doing that. And I have said this to him before, but he keeps going down that rabbit hole that gets him into trouble.
But if you were his attorney, is he right? I'm not going to let you off the hook. If you were his attorney, you walked in there in front of Judge Chris Christensen and said, you know what? They threw him out for swearing.
Yeah, I'm not sure that a First Amendment argument is a winning argument. I think that the council has rules that it lawfully may put into place. And I think that all the council people, by virtue of their seats on the council, have to abide by those rules.
Okay.
So, but I go back to what I said originally. Eric would be a much more effective representative if he showed some discipline.
I agree.
Because he's got the ability.
He's just a little passionate, over passionate.
I've seen it over the years.
Yeah.
He's very bright.
Very bright, but I do agree. Okay, let me go back. Jordan Steele. Well, right here. What is the process to hold Flint City Council accountable with violations, charges as it relates to the charter and members living out of the state running a city? Also, why is this corruption just flying off the handle in the city of Flint? No one is doing anything. Why? and a councilwoman lying under oath to get another councilperson convicted of disorderly conduct. So that's a bunch right there.
You know what we call that in a courtroom? We call that a compound question, because you can't give an answer because you don't know which question you're answering. Okay. So let's go back to the first part.
So
what was the first part?
What is the process to hold Flint City Council accountable with violations charges as it relates to the charter and members living out of the state running a city?
Okay, so the charter is a document that was adopted by a charter commission on behalf of the city. The city enforces it. I have no jurisdiction to enforce any part of the city charter. That's up to the city attorney to do. The next part is that if somebody is doing a corrupt act and somebody makes a police complaint about that corrupt act, then an investigation ensues. If the investigation reveals that there's probable cause that a crime was committed under state law, that's when I get involved. That's when I review the evidence submitted and make a determination if there's probable cause that a crime was committed.
Okay. All right. So the next part. Why all the corruption just flying off the handle in the city of Flint? No one is doing anything. Why?
So corruption's a broad term. Again, corruption, if it means that there's crime occurring, you have to have an investigation. And I don't have investigators who start or initiate investigations. That's up to the state police, the sheriff, Flint City, and the other municipal police departments, as well as the FBI can be involved. My investigators just follow up after cases have already been charged. Like they go looking for witnesses. They go looking, like we said, for that one woman who was a victim of a crime. They go looking for documents that we have to turn over to the other side as part of what we call discovery. So yeah, if you think there's corruption, a police investigation has to be made. Somebody's got to uncover evidence. Remember, for me to convict anybody in a courtroom, I have to put a live witness on a stand, put them under oath, and they've got to say the truth.
Right.
And I can't just go on rumor or innuendo. It's got to be real live people, real certified documents that we put before the trier of fact, which is the jury.
All right. And my big sister, Christine Brown, told me to tell you hi earlier.
Christine, I love you, gal. I hope you're doing well, and God bless you.
All right. So the next part to that, the third part to that from Tamara, a councilwoman lying under oath to get another council person convicted of disorderly conduct. Now that did happen, and the judge, I wasn't there, so I don't. They said the judge was really like, oh my God, she lied, but they didn't do anything about it.
Yeah, that was the case in front of Judge Vicky Bea Haley, who was a former assistant of mine.
Oh, okay.
I have a number of former assistants who are now on the bench. Judge Haley, Judge Gwynn, Judge Hannibal. They all worked in my office for me, and they're so great. I lost them all to being judges.
Well, that's a good thing.
That's a good thing. Good for the community, bad for me in my office, because they were all great assistant prosecutors.
Right.
And I miss them all, and they're dear people. I don't know why Judge Haley said what she said, because I wasn't involved in the case. If I'm not mistaken, that was a city prosecution.
Yes.
They brought in an outside special assistant city attorney, Mr. Gildner, to do that case. Yes. So I don't know what specifically she was referring to other than what I read in the media. And I never go by what I read in the media, because it's not under oath.
Yeah. Unless it comes from 810 News Media.
Then I believe it heart and soul.
Thank you. Shut up, Mickey. Okay, let's keep going. Mrs. Palmer, why are so many felonies pleaded down to misdemeanors even when the perpetrator is a repeat offender?
Great question. And I appreciate it, because I want the public to understand why we negotiate pleas, or as the public calls it, why we plea bargain. We do that for a number of reasons. Let's start first with the sheer volume of cases. We can't possibly take every case to trial. It's like, think of the roof of your house in winter and it snows for a week straight, and there's no melt off, and the snow just keeps piling up higher and higher. what's going to happen to your roof?
It's going to collapse.
It's going to collapse. Same thing with the criminal justice system. If we don't move cases out of the system will collapse. There's not enough judges. There's not enough courtrooms. There's not enough prosecutors. There's not enough defense lawyers. There's not enough jurors. There's not enough of anything to try every case. The second reason we plea bargain is oftentimes the plea bargain results in the same thing that would happen if we tried the case and won and convicted the alleged perpetrator. Let me explain. Michigan has what's called indeterminate sentencing guidelines. If somebody's convicted of a crime, then the judge is tasked with sentencing that person under the sentencing guidelines. Okay. And the judge, while those guidelines are advisory, the judges stick to them pretty closely. So let's say somebody's charged with home invasion 3rd degree, and they're also charged with larceny from that home, and they're also charged with stealing the car from the driveway, all in the same event. Sometimes we will, and if they were convicted of everything under the sentencing guidelines, they'd still get probation.
Wow.
Let's just say that's a case, and that happens. So we might dismiss one of the counts or dismiss 2 of the counts and make them plead to the 3rd count because they're still going to get probation.
Right.
And the length of the probation is going to be exactly the same if we had gone to trial and won it on all 3 counts. Okay. So we do that a lot because we know that the outcome is the same as it would be if we took the case to trial. So we look at those kinds of things. So the volume, the likely outcome, is it that much different than it would be if we took it to trial? And then the last thing, of course, is sometimes the cases aren't that great. They come in, let's say from the Flint police, and God bless the Flint police. They try the best that they can. But you know, and I know that currently there's like less than 100 police officers for all 3 shifts in the city.
I probably want to say 50, but yeah, okay.
Okay. But for purposes of our discussion, less than 100.
Okay.
Back in the day, when I was a young lawyer, defense lawyer in town, there were like 325, 350. So, but the number of cases that they have to investigate isn't less. It's become more difficult to investigate cases because now you've got DNA and body cams and all this other stuff, all for the good, but it's more work. So when the cases come over, and it's not just Flint City, and I don't want to pick on Flint City, it's all the agencies. There's more work, it's more scientific, and sometimes the cases aren't that strong.
Because remember, you are the Genesee County Prosecutor.
You bet.
So you get more than just Flint.
I get them from all the corners of the county, and sometimes the cases aren't great. So we have to make a determination. Can we win this case in court? Or are we better off to kind of plead it out, get what we can, and move on to the next case?
All right.
That's why we plea bargain.
Well, she has a second part to that. You may have already answered that in your question. And why does he decline or charge them as repeat offenders when they keep committing crimes every time they are free?
When somebody has a prior felony, we charge them as an habitual offender. We do it all the time and routinely. We never, ever give anybody a break. Now, as part of a plea bargain, might we dismiss the habitual offender status? Sometimes, because they're still going to get the same minimum indeterminate sentence that they would have got whether they were habitual or not. But at the outset, if they have a prior felony, we tack it on to the complaint as an habitual offender.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Let's see. Mrs. Palmer again. Can a business be charged with a crime if they agree to provide a service, get paid, and then refuse to speak to the person, like the business above that we talked about earlier? And she said it here, like the business above, Ken Harden, got paid to do a job for someone.
Ken Harden or Ken Thomas?
Well, she said, like the business above, it's a guy named Ken Harden.
Ken Harden's deceased. I knew Ken Harden. He passed away.
Well, she said Ken Harden.
Okay.
She said
Okay.
Ken Harden got paid to do a job for someone, did part of the job incorrectly, and then refuses to return or speak to the person. Well, he's deceased now. And this person is a veteran, and the VA paid them for the work over 1 month ago. Must be something about the name Ken. So I guess even if we took out the name, if a person got paid to do a job, did it incorrectly, won't talk to the person, does it make a difference if they're a veteran or a VA or whatever the case?
Well, we should be treating our veterans with honor and distinction, and we certainly shouldn't be doing anything to defraud them out of their hard-earned funds.
Absolutely.
With respect to charging a business, businesses can be charged with crimes, but it's rare in the state system. You see it in the federal system sometimes. Sometimes the attorney general will reach an agreement with a healthcare provider who may have a limited liability company or a professional corporation so that the healthcare provider can keep his or her license. I've seen that happen.
Okay.
But with respect to the incident of a business doing what she described, oftentimes that is a civil matter. That's a matter of going to court where the burden of proof is much less.
Mhm.
It's only a preponderance of the evidence as opposed to beyond a reasonable doubt, and asking for money damages. Because remember, in the criminal law, you have to prove intent. You have to get into the alleged perpetrator's mind and show that that person took my money and never intended to do the work. In the civil world, you don't have to prove that. You just have to prove they took my money and they didn't do the work, not that they never intended to do it. Big difference.
So some cases should be civil.
Correct.
Instead of criminal.
And that sounds like a case that would be more suited for the civil court.
Okay.
Requesting money damages.
All right. Thank you. Let's keep going. I got a bunch from this one person, but I want to try to get to each person, so I'm just going to ask a couple. This guy is Bobby Johnson. Every question is not going to be favorable here. And he said, you are violating the Michigan Constitution that says we have a right to speak with the prosecutor as a victim. Yet to this day, you refuse to speak to many victims of homicide's family. 2008 for him. Many others have gone longer. Read the Constitution.
Well, I'm certainly familiar with the Constitution and the Van Regenmorter Act, which is what it's named, for State Senator Bill Van Regenmorter from the west side of the state, who sponsored it many years ago. We have victim advocates on our staff. They're social workers who help victims of crime. And victims of crime are traumatized.
Yes.
They're traumatized by the crime itself. Then they get some notice in the mail that they have to come downtown to the courthouse. And they're further traumatized for things that those of us in the criminal justice system take for granted, like, okay, where do I park when I go down to the courthouse? Or where do I go? What building do I go to? Or where inside that building am I supposed to go? And what's going to happen to me when I go into that building? And is some mean lawyer going to attack me when I have to get on the witness stand? So we're further traumatizing those victims of crime. We have social workers on our staff who help them through that trauma. Victim rights include getting certain notifications from my office and getting certain services should you need services because of the trauma. And I think we're really good at providing those services.
I know the ladies in that office, one in particular, and I work closely with them over the years, especially with the DHS cases, and they do a wonderful job. And like you said, it is hard for someone to come to court. They have to look at this person who traumatized them, and it's like it starts all over again.
Exactly right. You said it beautifully, Wyntis.
So let's keep going here. Here's another one. Bobby Johnson. Why did you allow the drug and gun seller to go twice till he finally shot a 17-year-old Swartz Creek girl and dumped her in the river in Lansing? They prosecuted him, but David just kept letting him go. Derek Martin was his name.
I'm not familiar with that. I can assure you I didn't let anybody go. If I had probable cause to charge somebody, I would have done it. But beyond that, I'm not familiar with that name or the alleged facts that Mr. Johnson sets forth.
All right. Sister Audrey F. Young Muhammad, we have talked about the council in Alley. We have talked about Rick Snyder, so she can go back and look at those. Mr. Wiggins, he says he has one last question for Mr. Leyton. In your career as prosecutor, what case stands out in your mind as one you voluntarily I can't say the word. Recused yourself from and turned over to another agency to investigate, and tell us the compelling reasons you made that choice. And that's a good one.
Yeah. So, if you have a conflict of interest in a case, then the ethical thing to do for a lawyer is to recuse yourself from that case. And certainly that goes for a prosecuting attorney. In fact, under the Michigan Rules of Professional Conduct, there are 2 rules that apply specifically to prosecutors. And I've tried throughout my career to be extraordinarily ethical and do the right thing at all times. So if I have a conflict, or if there's an appearance of an impropriety, then I will recuse myself from the case. We will draft a petition, submit it to the Attorney General's Prosecuting Attorneys Coordinating Council, and they'll then reassign the case to another prosecutor from a neighboring county. And Oakland sometimes will get cases from us.
How many times have you done that?
Oh, I've done it. I've done it a number of times, and I've been prosecutor almost 20 years.
What's that one big one that you didn't want to, that you just said, I can't, I'm too emotionally entangled with this?
Can you think of any?
Oh,
well, most recently,
come on over here.
That's true.
All right.
Most recently, I recused myself in the prosecution of the former county clerk,
John Gleason,
because at the time he was still in office, and at the time I am the county's lawyer. So I recused myself in that case.
How the hell did that work? Like, what did you do? You did the investigation and stuff on the case? Like, you had to work it up, right?
Sheriff Swanson did the investigation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then he submitted it to me. I saw that it was my client.
Right.
And I said, I can't handle this.
Because aren't you on the election
board, commission? No, I'm on the one. Well, I'm on the reapportionment commission, but there's one panel with Judge Barkey and Gleason, the county clerk, and who was the third person on that? That's me. When the
said and me,
when,
right?
When the sheriff Bacall retired, we had to appoint a new sheriff.
Right.
I'm on that appointment committee.
Okay.
And we appointed Sheriff Swanson.
Okay. I like him.
So yeah, me too.
Okay.
That's why I voted for him. That's why I appointed him.
I like it.
But there's been other cases where I've known somebody that I've had to recuse myself. I just can't think of them off the top of my head.
Right. So many. So I do want to. I think how many minutes we got left, Mickey? Okay, I'm over.
How come I'm perspiring and you're not? That's what I want to know.
I'm used to the heat in here. I feel like I'm in a spa sauna day when I come in here, so I've gotten used to it.
Well,
Plus, you got on that tight tie.
Yeah,
like, loosen up,
but I'm burning calories.
You sure are. Listen, I have one, and I know that I have to ask this question for him.
Sure.
This is from Darius Hollins. Why was nothing done about the officers that harassed and chased down Vontrice Davis? I can give you a little backdrop. Vontrice Davis was the young man who lost his life in a alleged car chase from Flint City one morning about 2:30 a.m. on the corner of MLK and Pearson Road. Nothing happened to those officers. We don't know why.
I don't know off the top of my head. I can certainly look into it. But if there was a chase, did he end up dying in a crash?
Yes, it was a chase. So he was speeding. They were after him, and he crossed the line, and he hit another young man from Fenton head on. And the young man from Fenton is the one who said, they were chasing him. After we have the chief of police, Terrence Green, saying, we don't do police chases in the city of Flint.
Do we know why they were chasing him?
I have no idea.
Okay. I mean, even if a city has a policy that they're not going to chase and then they do chase, that in and of itself is not a crime. It's a violation of the policy, but it's not a crime under the laws of the state of Michigan. The crime is to flee from the police. If a marked police car turns on its lights and its siren and orders you to stop and you don't stop, under Michigan law, that's the crime. Fleeing and eluding, it's called. So I guess I'd have to look into it more to see exactly what happened, because if the only facts are that a marked car put on its lights and tried to stop somebody for an alleged legitimate reason, and that car took off and the police chased it, and then there was a crash, those facts alone don't say to me that the police did something wrong. If they violated the policy of the city, then the city has to do something about the policy violation. But that's still not a crime that can be charged by the county prosecutor.
So it's basically, and not to diminish at all the young man that died, but basically it was a violation of a work rule violation.
Exactly. A policy that the Flint City Police and or the Flint City Council and the mayor made. I don't know because I don't work in the city. Right. But based on those facts, that's what happened.
Okay. Next part to his questions. Why did the officers that assaulted John Fleming receive no punishment? Again, I think they're compounding you as the lead over Flint City.
Well, I think, isn't John Fleming the gentleman who was on the bus out on Miller Road?
Yes.
Okay, so we met with him and his attorneys. Were you in on those meetings? Okay, I'm struggling. Wyntis, I'm struggling to remember why we didn't charge that case, but I had a legitimate reason why we didn't do it. We looked at it very, very carefully. Okay. I know that we also didn't charge him. He had done something improper as well, but I told his lawyers, look, the way I see this is the police action wasn't great, and I wish they had done this differently. His action wasn't great, but I'm not going to charge him with what went on there.
Did he acknowledge any part of what happened? Do you remember?
I just remember that he and his legal counsel were satisfied with my decision.
Okay.
I remember that.
All right. We are over. I'm sorry, Mickey. One last question. I know he's going to have to turn. No, just one last question, please, Mickey. It's the prosecutor. Okay. So this is the last part to Darius' question. I have to ask this in today's climate. Why is the practice to punish blacks harsher than whites for the same crime still happening? Why was evidence from the Family Dollar shooting overlooked? How do 3 people get life without parole for one shot in self-defense?
That case went before a jury. A jury made the determination that the perpetrators, the accused individuals, were guilty of the crimes that were charged. That was a tragic case. Yes. A man lost his life, a good man from our community who had a family. There were no winners in that case. And I think we did everything correctly in that case. And I stand by my decision and the trial and what the jury ultimately decided. The bigger picture is blacks being treated worse than whites. That shouldn't happen. That makes me sad to hear that question. We strive every day in my office to treat everybody fairly, justly and equally. And I will continue to do that. And I will speak out always if I see any type of an injustice, and certainly any type of an injustice based on race or gender or creed or religion. That's wrong. America is the land of equality, and I believe so wholeheartedly in our Constitution. That's why I love this job and will continue in this job, because I'm fighting every day for fairness and justice and equality for all of our citizens.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Prosecutor
Thank
Leyton.
you.
And thank you to everyone that tuned in tonight. Thank you. And remember, thank you to my Flint Politic Rebooters. These were all your questions. This was your interview. And I hope to do more of these types of interviews to give you a chance to learn the people behind the scenes. A lot of stuff was new information for us tonight that we didn't even know. So I'm hoping that I got through the majority of your questions. I'm hoping that you were satisfied with this interview. Again, thank you, Mr. Leyton, for
Thank you
coming
so
out.
much.
It was
I
a
was-
pleasure. And we will tune in next week with Mr. John Carpenter at 6 p.m. Thank you.